Hey guys, PoNoob here. I am a avid player of this game and a large part of our test feedback and discussion, along with a lot of the tournament players for Super Auto Pets. The new update just came out. If you've opened Super Auto Pets and you have had to scroll through 3 pages of updates, both the updates and the explanation from the devs. That is in part our fault, in part mainly the devs' fault. They really wanted to make a big patch, and it made me really want to make a video in regards to the changes because there's a lot going on. I'm just going to go down the free-to-play characters. There's not going to be any gameplay in this video. I'm going to do it quickly because I meant to get back to work. So I really just want to talk about what you can do. There's nothing that's overly powerful. That's the whole point, right? It's a balancing patch. But there are still units that are more powerful, and there's still synergies that are still good, and I want to talk about those. So let's just get started here real quick. Ant. Ant put 6 stats on the board. It's a 2-1 that adds 2-1. 6 stats is more than you can get from any other unit in Tier 1. Ant is still going to be fantastic. It also scales well into the future, just because it does something, unlike a lot of the Tier 1 units. If you keep it on the board and make a really big ant, but more importantly, it also works really well with Pill, and Pill being really the most powerful item that you get early in the game. You'll often just make buy an ant and have it pilled. You don't necessarily need to get the level up. Beaver also hasn't changed. If you liked Beaver before, you'll still like Beaver. If you didn't like Beaver before, you won't like Beaver probably even more, just because other things around it are more powerful. But it is still one of the scaling options. We'll talk about Pig in a moment here, which kind of trumps Beaver in some senses. Cricket. Cricket hasn't changed, but Horse has changed. It's still a good unit in a sense when you can get it leveled up. Having it do anything compared to some of these means Big Cricket is better than some. But really, Cricket is just a disappointing unit. It's not going to be something that you want to be picking every game in any sense. Duck. We definitely got to talk about Duck. So Duck used to give both health and attack. It no longer gives the attack portion. For players who were in the know, grabbing lots of ducks was definitely the strategy. Sometimes even just sacrificing having 5 or 6 pets bought just so you could have 3, 4, 5 ducks on the board and use that to ramp yourself into the mid game. You can still do that, it just isn't very good. Definitely feel free to test around with Duck, but I'd say that Duck right now, with just the health, isn't worth sacrificing for the 1-2 body. Because you can do a similar effect with Beaver, but have it be a 2-2 body and have it also have more of like a beneficial level up, those sort of things. Fish is still going to be overly played. It's a 2-3 body and it does things, so people love it. Um, One of the big things to note with fish is pig now exists, and we'll get to pig. But you're still going to be picking fish, and you're still going to be playing fish, and you're going to still be seeing fish and need to be placing around fish. Horse is a 2-1 body. It makes horse pickable. Horse wasn't really pickable before, but it doesn't really make horse that appealing. You're going to see a lot of new players pick horse, because it's a really appealing, just obvious strategy. You do horse, and then all the spawners, right? You do cricket, spider, sheep, and then you go, haha, I have won 4 games, and that is as many games as an average player wins. Congratulations, me. But it doesn't transition to the late game. The body hasn't changed. There were patches where the horse did more of a buff, and it was really kind of overbearing. So yeah, shout out to horse. Mosquito's probably my favorite change, in part because I suggested it or at least promoted it. The damage now is dealt to different enemies, and what that gives Mosquito is a role late in the game. You can have a level 3 Mosquito that's just eaten all your buffs, and he can be the best of the Bison pairings. If you're going to have a tier 1 at level 3 and then your level 4 Bison, Mosquito is the most useful of the characters late, not necessarily the one that you want to hit level 3 the most. That would probably be Otter, but uh, it can break 3 melons in the very late of the game. Obviously, if you're keeping tier 1s too late in the game, that's very much a choice, though. Otherwise, Mosquito has been buffed here heavily, and you're going to see a lot of Mosquitoes because Pig exists, and we'll get to Pig in a moment. Otter, still the same. Otter's still probably the most powerful unit early in the game, and it still levels well. Otter's still one of my favorite units in the game. Um, but similar to Beaver, if you liked Otter before, you're still going to like Otter. If you didn't like Otter before, you're probably still not going to be picking Otters. Pig is now a 3-1, and this changes a lot of things that I've already kind of mentioned. It makes it a lot better just as a battling unit, but it also makes it more vulnerable to Mosquito. So careful with your pigs. Definitely feel free to take pigs, mosquitoes, ducks, and ants, just the big scaling units, maybe some otters, and ignore the fish and the mosquitoes. Potentially lose your first two, or at least maybe tie your first rounds, but put yourself into a better position in the future. Or don't do that and just use pigs and fish and mosquitoes and probably otters to win lots of games early and give yourself a bit more breathing room when trying to do a transition. Crab's changed. It's now changed to the most healthy friend. This means that crab placement matters less, but it does stop like crab chaining, and it does stop crab scaling. So you can't just buff one unit and go, haha, I made my dog have 14 health to 27 health, and now my crab is keeping up. Now you need to buy another crab, which you can do, by the way. You can just upgrade the crab or just buy another crab. You'll still see them. They're still tier 2. Dodo's been nerfed. It's still 2-3, but it's only 50% of the attack. That being said, it's still the only scaling unit in the low tiers, or like at least to this level. And so having a dodo and putting some levels into it still works out well. Really, you do need to hit that level 2 for dodo to feel pleasant. But generally, if you're going to be putting food into animals, dodo is still one of the best ones to do it. And really, I think the biggest problem dodo has now is there's no way to buff its attack. A lot of the things we've talked about, beaver, uh, sorry, I got a phone call here. There we go. Beaver, duck, uh, and then also rabbit and shrimp here in the future, all buff the health, and that's not going to help the dodo. So a bit unfortunate. Uh, Elephant hasn't changed. Elephant's still kind of crap. It is a 3-5 body though. The problem with Elephant is obviously if you're buying it early, you have to put it at the back, and you don't really want to put your big units in the back, and the interactions it does aren't that powerful, and if you don't put it in the back, it start killing things, and the only thing you can really do early in the game, unless you get like a puffer fish, at which point it's cool, or camel, I guess, is the Peacock, and I'll talk about why Peacock's lame. Flamingo hasn't changed. Still great. I still want to freeze pills, mainly not necessarily because of Flamingo. We'll talk about Turtle in a moment, but Flamingo still does great things. Hedgehog, still a meme. It Hedgehog as like a unit, like you need to have like multiple hedgehogs, or you need to be like really committing into it. If you haven't seen hedgehog comps, they're hilarious, and they're still powerful, right? You can still win lots of games with lots of hedgehogs and or the similar badger, skunk, those sort of things. I don't think its position has really changed much. There was a point where there was more health buffing because Rabbit was tier 2, but we're beyond that, so I think Hedgehog's pretty similar. Definitely feel free if you just get a bunch of Hedgehogs and the hurt things to commit to the Hedgehogs, so make sure that you are actually trying to win the match and not just drawing, because Hedgehogs don't scale into the super late game. Peacock hasn't changed. Peacock's still really just an annoying unit because it doesn't really do much. If you overbuff your Peacock, then the attack buffs don't matter because your Peacock kills anything every way. If you don't buff your Peacock at all, then it just starts dying to anything that has more than 5 attack, and then that one attack looks really paltry. Um, so the unit, just the way it works, is awkward, and so even if the Peacock is buffed, it's never going to be like a premier unit. They didn't change Rat, which is hilarious. Or they changed it back. It's still a 4-5 body. It's still Dirty Rat. And it is still incredibly mediocre, and if you're picking it, it's for memes. Shrimp hasn't changed, but Shrimp is weaker in a sense because Dog is now tier 3. Definitely feel free to still pick Shrimp and hope that you get Dog or just have it for a bit. but you don't need to be as committal on your shrimp as you were previously. You definitely shouldn't be buying and selling just for the one health effect on a random unit. That you need to be doing more than that, or just only doing it because you have a correct money amount. Spider, the change hasn't changed much. You're still looking for turtles and sheep when you get it, but it's not a huge deal. Uh, Spawners aren't overly powerful. Swan's still the best unit in the game. The body is slightly smaller. Don't worry about that. If you see Swan, you should probably be putting it on your team if you have any room, at least early in the game. And even late in the game, it's still a useful unit. Badger is the coolest unit in the game. You can still do things like Honey Badger, and you can still put it in the front. There are a couple of things like Tiger being slightly weaker that don't help Badger. But definitely, if you're not already using Badgers, and getting honey badger wins, or especially if you're not putting them in the front and just plowing into these teams that are putting their biggest guy in the front, it kind of works as a pseudo scorpion, and you should be doing that. Blowfish hasn't changed. Blowfish strategies are the same, and we've already talked about hedgehog. Likewise with camel, I don't believe that's been changed. Dog hasn't changed, but it has been moved up to tier 3, and it makes it difficult to find dogs, simply just because tier 3s, by the time you get to tier 3, you're seeing 3 different tiers compared to when you found it in tier 2, and you could literally get handed 3 dogs in a turn. It makes it also harder to level up, and it's also later in the game. That does not make dog bad, it just makes it less overbearing. I think dog is in a really good place where it's similar to other strategies. Um, Giraffe has a bigger body. Giraffe's cool. Um, Definitely feel free to put Giraffe, but I still wouldn't play Giraffe unless you're buffing something that makes sense, right? Like if you're buffing a camel or a dodo or something that's already got a garlic on it, maybe a pufferfish. Like those sort of things are worth buffing. If you're just buffing a random unit because you have a giraffe, maybe on turn 3 or turn 4, that's fine, but it's still not like incredibly strong. Obviously, scaling in general is a good thing to be doing, though. If you can afford a giraffe, definitely feel free to take a giraffe. Kangaroo will be overplayed. The 1-2, I think, is still the same body. Um, there's less things to put kangaroos behind, basically, because dog is gone from the like super meta. You're not going to just be putting kangaroos behind dogs all day or seeing kangaroos behind dogs all day. And you are probably going to see even more like things like dolphins and stuff that like really ruin kangaroos' day. So be careful with your kangaroos, but they're still good. I think they're still overplayed in a sense, but it's fine. Ox is still really fun, but hasn't changed, and I don't really have much to say. If you haven't already, definitely feel free to pill things in front of the ox and get the power and the melon on there. Badger ox, for example, once the ox already has a melon, is very strong until the badger hits a very large size. Um, Definitely feel free to have that early melon early. It's still very good. Rabbit hasn't really changed. Rabbit, if you liked it before, it's still good. If you didn't like it before, probably still not going to be playing rabbits. Food is generally better though, which definitely helps the rabbit squad. Sheep, I still defend sheep like because it's 6 attack and 6 health doesn't really matter, but 6 attack in turn tier 3. If you get it early, like turn 3, turn 4, sheep is a very strong body. You're just not going to find that sort of body anywhere else here in tier 3, unless you run into a garlic. That being said, it's just spawner food from there. Snail, still very, very good. I don't think it's actually changed there at +2, +1. If you can get 3 snails and get the level up effect, it's really great. Um, if you're not already doing heart math, if you already have like 9 hearts in arena and you can lose round 4 to go to 7 hearts, it doesn't change the end of the game, but it does change your ability to get snails on, say, like turn 5. So definitely feel free to be throwing round 4 to try and set yourself up for snail success. Turtle's still one of the best units in the game, not because of Turtle, but because Melon on turn 3 to 6 is just absurd. Um, Without having to do like all the shenanigans of Ox, you can put it on anything. Obviously, without having huge dogs every single game, you have one less target that will love Melon. But definitely feel free to put Melon and put Melon on something that you're going to be using later into the game. Don't just put it on your big fish, because then you've just committed yourself to having the fish the whole time. Bison still really fun. I think Bison is more powerful uh, in this patch than before, mainly because a lot of its competition is now gone. You still need to get that tier 3, but with Mosquito and generally, there's lots of things that you can get to level 3. If you can get a level 3 and look towards Bison, definitely feel free to do so. Deer hasn't changed. Deer still ruin stuff. One of the things I like with Deer is the splash attack. A lot of the snipers are better, and splash attack in combination with snipers kind of just rips through their team. Um, you can instead of trying to target one thing, you can just target everything at once with teams these days. Dolphin's an incredibly important unit, especially if you're doing across the uh, the free to play and the pay to win. So you can snipe things like the silly caterpillars or well butterflies before they grow. It's also why Dolphin is showing up in the pay to win. Shoots things like scorpions and shoots things like deers before they get eaten by whales. Definitely feel free to sneak dolphins into your comp, similar to how you sneak uh, a scorpion in. They just end up doing a lot of stuff for not much commitment. Hippo hasn't changed. Hippo can be better because there's going to be less big things around, but spawners haven't really gone crazy. I think Hippo's a lot better in that fly, like turkey madness, isn't going to be so big that if you do run into a spawner comp as a Hippo, it's going to be doing more. But really, it just belongs in tier 4. It's a good tier 4 unit. Um, Parrot's been shifted down. I really do like Parrot. It does a lot of fun things. It's weird that the things that Parrot is good with, things like Rooster and whatnot, are weird. But if you get like an early Parrot, you can just do whatever. Like if you find a Leopard, you're like, okay, I guess the big Parrot I put a bunch of levels and love into is now also a Leopard. But you can also do that with a boar or a rooster or a skunk or whatever. Um, Parrot at tier 4, similar to what I was talking about with dog, means that you just get a lot more parrots and a lot more time to make a big parrot, and it's gonna work no matter what you do. So I'm hot on parrot. I'm not saying it's actually like really good. I just think that definitely feel free to try out parrot for yourself. Penguin's still the high roll strategy. If you get a level 2 penguin and have 4 things it's buffing, in free to play, nothing else really matches with it. You are going to see a lot of 10 win penguins. You're also going to see a lot of failed penguins because it's a 1-2 body and it doesn't do much otherwise. If you're in a good spot and you see a penguin or you see an early penguin, definitely feel free to take it. But it's not like this world beater. It, I think penguin runs into a lot of issues with survivorship bias, and I'm not going to explain that right now. Rooster. Rooster's a huge one. It's been nerfed. It only does half. Rooster's still good. Sorry to tell you, you don't need, it's not necessarily like Dodo Rooster, though Dodo Rooster is still cool. It's just, it's the only way you can get 4 bodies, and if the bodies are half decent, you're good to go. And especially with Rooster being weaker, you're also not going to see as many like crazy hedgehogs or like attempts like rhinos. People aren't going to be trying to actively counter your roosters. Not that you necessarily could on the old patch, so Rooster's still fine. It's something that you need to put love into. That being said, it feels really awkward if you just like put a bunch of pairs into your Rooster and then it doesn't get to a level where you feel comfortable taking it into the super late game. So just be careful with your Rooster. It can sometimes be a bit more transitional than a committal unit than it has been previously. Skunk is still going to be underplayed, and Skunk should not be underplayed. Skunk is fantastic. There's less dogs, so Skunk is going to be a bit less in the meta, just because there's going to be slightly less big things to shrink. Um, but the the sniper build I think is really strong, and Skunk helps that right. If you skunk their big thing and you dolphin their 2 small things, then you have 5 units and they have 3 units, and you have no unit on their team that you can't kill. Skunk's fantastic in that sense. It's also just a good fill unit. You can just toss a skunk in while doing things like dragon cycling. Squirrel has changed. This iteration of Squirrel is fairly new. I think it's fine. I think it's less fun than some of the other squirrels that we've had. I do think it makes food more powerful. Definitely feel free to try out the food strategy. And the body at 2.5. Obviously not winning any awards at tier 4, but um, definitely feel free to try out Squirrel. I don't really know exactly where we're at on this particular Squirrel, and so I don't want to say too much more. Whale's been shifted up to tier 4. It will probably get buffed because 2.6 for the whale body at tier 4 is really sad. Basically now whale is just if you're doing whale into deer and you find them both in tier 4, or you find it early because whale in tier 4 makes no sense to me. Worm Worm's a bit weird. Worm was powerful at times during the updates because Rabbit was tier 2, and now Worm's gone back to that obvious noob strategy of like, okay, I'm gonna just commit to a thing, and obviously that can still be powerful, but like, don't be tricked. +1/+1 to the Worm body hasn't like made Worm top tier. Cow milk has changed, but more importantly, the upgrades have changed. If you have a like strong food build going, you're having these things that I'm talking about, squirrel and worm, and you upgrade the milk to have +2/+4s, especially if you then get a thing like a cat in the future. Uh, Upgrading cows is actually a thing that you can do now, but it's still a decent cycling unit. Don't be tricked. +1/+2 is still worth getting. Well, two, it's +2/+4. Um, Milk Cow is probably the best unit in the game in some senses previously, and it being nerfed shouldn't scare you away. Crocodile 8/4. It now shoots 8 damage. I found this 8 damage like really important, or the 16 damage compared to 14 damage previously. The body's also bigger. I think Crocodile's just really pickable. Obviously you can go like full sniper, but even just as a fill unit, I think Crocodile is a bit more impressive um, with these minor buffs. I think it's the most surprising unit of how a little change helped it out entirely. It's also still good at sniping out things like flies and turkeys and whatnot, just these back units. But it also will often just kill something stupid like a monkey. A monkey at tier 5 is so much more balanced. I'm really happy they did this change. But when monkey goes off, it is going to go off even harder with +3, +6, +9. Really, if you can get 2 monkeys or that level 2 monkey, you are super set. The body obviously does nothing, and you want to be buffing something that loves the buff, for example, the Rhino. But monkeys still good. You're just not going to be able to get those like super early monkey high rolls because it's tier 5 now. Rhino, we'll talk about spawner in a second. Rhino's really just an anti spawner thing. Um, or if you're like really into the splash damage. Um, I don't think Rhino is like a particularly shout outable unit. I think Rhino similar to Hippo. It's more more big and fun than it is like super meta. Scorpion still gonna ruin things. Hasn't changed. There's less big dogs, but it still is a incredibly important unit to know about when you're setting up your teams or something to look for if your team desperately just needs a way to kill a big unit, especially in something like versus. Seal, bigger body. I think Seal's actually shown itself to be quite decent at times, just because food is easier to get, and also just the bigger body means that it does actually hit that point. It's still going to be disappointing compared to your cats, but you can definitely always do both and throw things like salads and sushis around. And I definitely suggest trying out Seal. I don't think it's going to be super. Nobody's going to be like, aha, I'm always doing a Seal build, but I think Seal is definitely something that you should definitely try out. Shark hasn't changed. Shark's still kind of lame. Obviously, you can pill things to make Shark bigger, but like if you're that committal to doing Ox things that late in the game, what are you doing? You can put it behind a spawner build and also be vaguely disappointed. But it's a big body. People like it in the same way they like Kangaroo. Turkey hasn't changed. Turkey's still cracked because of the way that it buffs just any unit. You're going to be seeing a lot of turkeys into like leopards and tigers, and just having large units, but not necessarily having to go into the full spawner. We'll talk about fly. I'm actually going to skip ahead to fly. Um, fly in turkey still works, right? Like you can still have three bigger bodies, but it's not going to spawn 10, 12 bodies. Fly is great as a unit, by the way, but it only does 3 units. So what you end up doing with a turkey is not necessarily having to fully commit into a spawner build. My favorite is what I've already mentioned, the tiger leopard, then a spawner like a deer with a mushroom into turkey fly, and that way the turkey's still helping out the fly and still helping out the deer, but without having to like really just still keep sheep and spiders on the board. Boar is a fairly new unit. If you've seen boar around, it's cute. Similar to Hippo and Rhino in a sense, it's just a unit that likes being big and being buffed. Um, I haven't found it that impressive, but the big reason you pick up boar is you look at the 8/6 body, and it's going to be better than a lot of things that you're doing. If boar is an improvement to your board, take it. But it's not going to result in like crazy scaling. There are better tier 6 units. Here they are. Cat hasn't changed. Cat's still ridiculous. Cans are weaker, which really doesn't help cat in any sense because that's the biggest, most powerful thing that cat can do. But you still can have cat be your late game engine and then just pick things like pizzas and sushis without necessarily even having to commit into the can. Dragon, I think, is snuck in as probably the most powerful late game unit just because it didn't get hit by nerfs. I've found a dragon in a lot of my end game compositions on both the old update and now this new update. Um, Obviously, there's a bit of luck involved. You still have to find the level ones, and you still have to have an empty lane. A lot of these things that the people haven't really acknowledged the true power of, be it cat, dragon, um, even like monkey, just things that like you can have in multiple lanes. You can have 2 dragons. You don't have to hit the level 2 to get +2 to +2 all friends. You can just have 2 dragons. And obviously you can combine them if you need the space in the future, but you don't necessarily just have to have one dragon, and that obviously helps out tremendously. It is a slightly bit weaker because you're not going to be doing cycling stuff like dog every game now, but it's fine. Fly, if you look at this, it spawns out 3. This description's not very good, but you're still getting 20 attack worth of fly from one unit, right? Like you expect your fly to survive, and then it's going to spit out 3 more 5/5 flies. That's 20 damage. Obviously, things like garlic and running into things like hippos and rhinos and boars aren't going to be healthy for your fly. It's never actually really going to do that 20 damage that you want it to do. But a fly is a really good transitional unit. You can just put a fly in it and it will improve most of your teams. And there are fun synergies. Um, Obviously, like spawner stuff is fun, but I think one of my favorite things to do with fly is to pair it with skunk. If you have a level 3 skunk, they only have 1 health. You just need a warm body to make sure that the thing that the skunk, uh, one to kill the melon, one to kill the actual unit. Fly is still the best warm body unit in the game. Gorilla is 6'9", nice, hasn't changed much. You can do silly things with Gorilla, but really the 6'9" body just makes it pickable. Um, I used to love picking gorillas, and I still will pick gorillas, but I don't think it's particularly powerful. Don't get too excited about your gorilla. Leopard has been updated to 10.4. Leopard was already one of my favorite units, and now you can just pick it and play it whenever. Um, a large leopard nerf has happened, though, and it's not visible in the buff, and it's the nerf to tiger, which is the biggest thing that you could do with leopard. That being said, buffing your leopard to level 2, level 3, can make it go off, and it still likes other powerful units, right? Like it still works with cat and dragon and turkey. Leopard is just, I think, one of my favorite units, and I think it's going to be just a large part of the meta in general. Mammoth has been buffed to 310. It doesn't change much. It's still pill bait when pills are really hard to find because you are at tier 6 and you're looking through 12 different items. instead of say on tier where you only have to deal with 4 items and you're very likely to get a pill. Um, that being said, Mammoth with mushroom shenanigans is still hilarious and fun, and I'm not going to stop you from doing it. I just don't think it's the craziest thing you can be doing. Snake, still really powerful. I don't pick enough snakes just because they are less exciting to me than leopards, but you should definitely still be playing snakes. You're not going to have like an obvious dog necessarily, but like someone like Snake Bison still very powerful, and you can always put Snake behind a spawner or something with a mushroom on it and get multiple attacks guaranteed. Definitely feel free to protect your snakes too with things like the mushroom or the melon. Tiger, I think this is an interesting change. I think Tiger is really healthy now because it wasn't healthy previously. It's based on the level. So in some senses, the parrot, because the parrot gives you an opportunity to get the levels sooner in tier 4, has its own role now. And what results from tiger is things like tiger turkey are less crazy. Tiger snake is less crazy, though still very powerful. Tiger leopard is less crazy. And these are probably like the three nuttiest things that you could do in free to play previously. You can still do them, they are still strong, but they aren't like game breakingly strong. Don't get too excited. Beyond that, the oh, the can hasn't changed. I lied. Can is back to 2-2. Pick your cans, pick your chocolate, take your melons. Nothing's changed here in the food. You're gonna see a lot more salads just because you're gonna see a lot more food. So you end up with these like mid tier, mid game, just kind of like 5 units that all have double digit health sort of stuff when players are playing a lot of salads, and that's a comp that you're going to have to just deal with more, but it's fine. This video is already gone for 30 minutes. I've rambled plenty. Really, just feel free to play whatever. We've tried to really balance out this game, and while some things are still not going to like ever be too strong, or some things like Penguin, I think is probably the best example. A strong Penguin round is very nutty. Um, but generally, Penguin isn't that strong. A lot of things are going to be happening, and I'm excited to see where the meta is. Really, if you're just looking for the strongest units, I didn't want to say it at the beginning of the video because it would result in everybody closing out. But look towards Swan. Look towards Snail. Look towards, I think, honestly, I need to shout out Badger and Skunk. Not necessarily because of the strongest units, but because they deserve shouting out. Cat and Dragon and Snake are really the units I would be looking towards. Uh, don't sleep on things like mosquitoes and otters and pigs, especially pigs, because they're your best scaling that you can get early in the game. So, with that, I will let you guys go. I appreciate you watching, and I hope this is educational. Thank you.